Good morning. So today I want to talk about the list of 10 from Joe Naso, number 5 on the list. Girl from Miami near Down Peninsula. I was going to talk about Pam Lamson and go out of order, but I'm going to stick to the original plan, which is to go in order. So this case was featured heavily on the television show. There were some things that was inaccurate about it, the way it was portrayed, and I'm going to set the record straight with everything today. So, the girl from Miami near Down Peninsula. That is what Joe Naso wrote. This was obviously one of the ones that investigators couldn't figure out. How I figured it out, it didn't come together in 3 minutes like the television show. But it did come together, I guess, relatively quickly after I started putting parameters on my searches. And this is what I mean. So when I was looking at all the unsolved cases just from the list of 10 and how to figure them out, you're looking for little tiny clues. And just off of the list of 10, what he wrote, there certainly, as you can imagine, isn't a lot. You couple that with the information that Bill Noguera was able to gather, then you're able to start piecing some things together, like we just did in the last episode with Mount Tam. Except there are cases that, frankly, Joe didn't talk about. And this was one of them. So how was I able to figure it out? Well, what I did was I'm searching for missing people, females, white females from Miami in the 70s that went missing from California or was in California but was from Miami. The only information that I got from Joe Naso through Bill, she was visiting her sister in California. Okay? That was it. So as I go through NamUs, and for people that don't know, NamUs is missing people and unidentified bodies, and it's a good resource. I had a lot of possibilities. I'll turn to my binder here for that, and I have written down NamUs number UP5834, body found 7671, San Francisco Pier number 7, age 20 to 50. That's a possibility. That's all that is. But I wrote it down. NamUs number UP5846, March 18th of 76. She's 25 to 60. NamUs number UP5858, 36 of 79. She was found nude on the beach, had blue jeans, things like that. And then I would try to find out more about that NamUs entry. But there were so many that could fit, as you can imagine. And I said to myself one night, about 2:30 in the morning, had been at it for about 4 hours. I was like, there's got to be an easier way to do this, to try to figure out and narrow down a victim. So I went back to the Joe Naso search warrant inventory and was looking through the search warrant pictures of what the police officers took at the scene. And I said to myself, what is important to him? I was trying to figure out a connection, location, anything, what is important to him at that time in his life, in the 70s, that could help me, to give me a clue. And I couldn't figure it out. And so I was getting frustrated. And one thing that my dad always taught me is never react on emotion. Sleep on it. Best advice I've ever got. So I did. I slept on it, got up in the morning, went back at it, and it was then it hit me. And it didn't hit me like an aha moment. This is it. It was just a starting point. I said, double initials. That's the only pattern that I have found, and as far as I know, investigators have found while investigating Joe Naso, is the double initials. We don't know what it is, right? I gave you my theory and what I thought it was. But at this moment, that's the only pattern. So I said, let me start looking at missing people in that time frame, hopefully with a connection to Miami, Florida, but maybe it's not. But the 70s that have double initials. And you wouldn't be surprised at the number that there is. I mean, it's not a huge number, but there is a handful. So then I had to start deducing from that. And nothing fit. There was no missing people, no missing persons with double initials that I saw in the 70s that fit his MO or from Miami. So I was kind of stuck again, but then I said, why don't, instead of looking at missing persons report, why don't we look at maybe the body was found and it's unidentified? So I did that. Again, I really came up with nothing. And I'm striking out, but then I thought, well, maybe a body was found and she was identified. And police, it's just an unsolved murder. Therefore, it wouldn't be in NamUs. That's when everything came together. So I'm deducing. I'm looking now for double initials of somebody murdered in California that is unsolved. And can you imagine my surprise when I run across a news article that said Charlotte Cook? Because right off the bat, when I saw CC, Charlotte Cook, it immediately triggered my mind to Carl Chessman, CC. Now, I'm not saying there is a direct correlation. I don't know. Only Joe Naso knows that. But that was the theory that I was working off of, and it seemed to be working. So I start reading it. The newspaper article that I get, and I'll show it if I have it on my computer here. I'm sure I do somewhere. But it said Peninsula News. That was the article that I found. So all of a sudden, the little clue, girl from Miami near down Peninsula, meant something to me. I'm not from California. I don't know what down Peninsula meant. I had no idea. I thought maybe Joe had maybe even traveled to Florida. To me, that's like a peninsula. And he killed somebody there, so I was researching people from Florida. I saw this newspaper and it said Peninsula News. And I was like, oh crap. I might be onto something. So you get a little bit more excited. I kept reading the newspaper accounts of where this girl was found. Daly City, again, doesn't mean anything, but as I researched it, I learned that Daly City in that area is known as Down Peninsula. And I'm like, oh man, things are lining up. This has got to be her, right? So it's just one more thing that added on to my excitement that I might have found the right victim here for Joe Naso's list of 10, number 5, Miami, girl from Miami near down Peninsula. As I'm reading more articles about her, there was about 3 or 4. The father, who I believe was in the military, he had to go identify his daughter's body. And in this article, it said that she was visiting her sister. I had it. I'm like, this is her. That's the one piece of information that Joe Naso gave Bill Noguera. Now, it didn't come without its problems. You know what the problem was? She was a black female. That wasn't Joe Naso's MO, right? She's a black female. She still has the initials. She's visiting her sister, just like Joe told Bill. She was found down Peninsula. Gotta be her. But one important detail I couldn't figure out, right? And what is it? I know one of you guys is saying it right now. Miami. She wasn't from Miami. I believe she may have been from Oakland and was visiting San Francisco, or San Francisco visiting Oakland, whichever one it was. So where does Miami fit into this? If I can't figure that out, then the whole theory, the whole investigative theory of it being Charlotte Cook, I feel I'm not confident about it. So in the television show, it shows that I'm driving along this SUV and I have producers in with me and a cameraman, and following us is another team of producers, and they radio quick, "Hey Ken, did you see that? That sign said Miami." And people jumped on that as if that was the case. Ken is getting all the credit for this, and it was a producer that figured it out. No, that's not the case. Well, not quite. This is how it really happened. That was all staged. Okay? That's how they wanted to film that discovery. So I was acting during that. I had known already before we filmed that about Miami Court. For you that haven't watched it, Miami Court is actually a street near Joe Naso's studio in Oakland. Now, I wish that I could take credit in figuring that out, but I cannot. I have to give the credit to one of the owners of Fireside Pictures and executive producer, Patrick DeLuca. Before we filmed anything, and I was trying to figure out who the people on the list, on Joe Naso's list, were, I had gotten all this information about Charlotte Cook, and I was feeding it to them saying, "Hey, I think I figured out number 5 on the list. I feel confident, but there's still something about Miami. I don't know where that fits in." And as I'm researching it, all of a sudden I get a call from Patrick DeLuca. He's like, "Hey man, I just happened to be looking around the area of Oakland and saw a street named Miami Court." And I was like, "Dude, you did it. That's it. That's the final piece of the puzzle." I was confident that I had it before, but now, yes, because then we started researching Miami Court in the 70s, and it was a known like drug prostitution area, stuff like that. It's a place where Joe Naso certainly would have frequented. And great feeling. So Patrick figured that out, the final piece of the puzzle. And it all came together. And I was like, "Hey, we got it." So I felt confident that we solved number 5 on the list. What the TV show does show very accurately is me going to the police station and giving my results to the detective, who was a great guy, cared about the job. He was one of those ones that, I felt good shaking his hand. Their reaction was a bit of a surprise to me, and certainly the producers of the show, when they were like, hey, you solved this case for us. Joe Naso was on our radar, which made me feel great because, hey, they didn't even have the information that I had, and they had Naso on the radar. It just made me feel, it validated my findings a little bit better. And then they said we were planning to make an arrest based off of this information, which was a surprise. But I felt really good about it. And so did the producers. So what you see, maybe 4 minutes of that part in the show, actually was a couple months of me researching, a couple hours of sitting down with the detective, and then meeting with Charlotte Cook's family and letting them know what happened. And that was one of the most emotional parts of the whole series. But it like I said on the show, it's a hard thing to do, because you get the brunt of their anger, their sadness, their trepidation, their hate, their relief. You get the whole gamut of emotion from them. You got to imagine that in that particular instance, I'm bringing back 50 years of suppressed trauma for these individuals, right? They know that their mom went missing. They don't know how. They don't know why. They hear so many different stories. And for me to come to them 50 years later and say, hey, this is what happened, and I feel confident about it because of X, Y, and Z. You don't ever go to a victim's family and just say, hey, this is what happened because it's my gut instinct. I'm the lead investigator and that's what I feel. Kind of like what they did with the Pam Lamson case. I got to be honest. I think they jumped the gun on that, and I'll get into that when I talk about her video. But this was Charlotte Cook. Very emotional, and I had to get up, and I don't know if they show that in the series or not, but I got up and walked out of the room for a couple of reasons. One is, when my son died, the district attorney and a co-worker, another detective, came to my house at, midnight. And they stood over top of me as I was sitting on the couch grieving. They had good intentions. They were there for me. You know what I mean? And I always remember that and respect that and appreciate that. But it also made me feel very uncomfortable. And I did not want to do that to these victims. We had been in the room. I had explained to them X, Y, and Z. This is why. I answered every question that they had to the best of my ability. And then it was like an uncomfortable silence where we're just sitting there. And I didn't want them to feel any more uncomfortable than what they were. So I got up and I excused myself from the room. Now, it was also that, and because maybe I went upstairs to the bathroom and shed a tear in the mirror a little bit. So it was twofold. But it's a necessary evil, and it's one of the hard things, but it has to be done. And again, Fireside Pictures, so remarkable that they offered them counseling services after the show. It's such a class act. So that was the interaction. That was the whole investigative scene for girl from Miami near down Peninsula. So what he did, how Joe Naso remembered it, he picked her up from Miami, not Miami, Florida, Miami Court, which was only a couple blocks from his studio. And then when he killed her and dumped her on, I think it was Thornton Beach, that is considered down Peninsula. She had the initials, CC. Now that she was a black female, that was an oddity for him. And as I talked to Bill Noguera about it, he expressed to me it made sense to him, because if he talked about killing a black female in prison, it would start a race, not a race war, but it would be violence to Joe Naso because of race. So it made sense. And if it made sense to Bill about politics in prison, it made sense to me because he's an expert on that. I am not, and I don't claim to be. So, you have validation from Bill. You have validation from the detective from Daly City. In my own confidence, I felt 98% that I had solved that. And that's pretty high, right? So I always get the question, how do you become a cold case detective? Ken Mains, how did you become a cold case detective? Well, I had that in mind a long time ago, over 10 years ago. And I got the answer right here. Mastering Cold Case Investigations, a guidebook for detectives. I wrote this 550-page behemoth for that purpose. Because when I was in high school, when I was in college, and then when I became a detective, I wanted to know more about cold cases, why they go cold, why are they unsolved? Is it evidence? Is it lack of determination? Is it perseverance? Is it politics? All the above. Well, I set the answer to all those questions in my new book. It's been 10 years of research, writing, jotting down things. I knew that I was going to write this book eventually. And it finally has come to a head where I'm able to actually get it done, get it published by Unsolved No More Publishing, and get it out to you. So who's this book for? It's for detectives. It's for amateur detectives. It's for college students, academia, forensics. The topics I cover in this book, from what is a cold case, victimology, research, crime scene location, criminal profiling, conflict, greed, sex and revenge, possibilities versus probabilities. That is huge in this book. I go through that a lot because that's the basis and foundation of my methodology. Evidence, sketches. Of course, you have affirmations. Why should you listen? Social media, the rule of psychology, equivocal deaths, modus operandi, signature. Legal and ethical considerations in cold cases, integrity, involving as a cold case detective, serial killers, missing persons, domestic violence, exposing myths, premeditation versus spontaneous, confidential informants, wrongly convicted, clandestine graves, you name it. I cover it in here. 550-page hardcover textbook. And along with all those topics, I also wanted to do case studies, especially case studies on confessions. Why? Because you can learn so much from confessions. At the end of the book, I go in great detail about killers in general who have confessed, why they did it, and what we can learn. That's always the most important thing, what we can learn from them and move forward and apply what we learned on that case to a future case. So I have all that. I tried to incorporate as much as I could, and there's a lot in there about real life cases that I've worked on and I have either solved or learned something from. And I'll tie that to a specific chapter, along with tips, certain things that I think you should look for in certain areas. It's a great book to learn from. But it's not just for active law enforcement members, private investigators, defense attorneys. Everybody can learn from this book. And that is what is motivated me to write this, is I want people to learn. I am tired of seeing wrongfully convicted people. I'm tired of the politics of district attorneys' offices and state police and local jurisdictions who either don't have the resources to do it or they just pass it off because they don't know how, they don't want to, they don't have the desire, the determination. And all that does is affect the victims and the victims' families. And I see it time and time again. You will see endorsements and affirmations from victims' family members in here who I've worked with in the past because they are the most important people. To pass off what I have learned to you so you can be a great investigator, you can be a great detective, and you can solve cases just like I do. Get your copy now. I'll sign it. I'll get it out to you and start learning. That way we can start solving cool cases together. But there's another one on this list that I solved that I was even higher on the percentage that I solved the case. And I think we're going to get into that next, number 6. But I would say that as an investigative standpoint, this was the most rewarding for me as an investigator, to put the pieces together and figure out that Joe Naso murdered Charlotte Cook. And it felt good. It's great to get the validation, especially from the police department. It was great to get the hug from Charlotte Cook's family and say, you're the only one that cared. Listen, that meant more to me than anything that I did on that whole television show. That meant the most to me because I did care, because I know it brought maybe not closure, but some sort of resolution to what was going on in their mind for 50 years. Did my mom leave me? Did she hate me? Did my dad kill her like the rumors that I heard? No. It's the act of one individual. And this is who it is, and this is why. And I always say that because that's the most important thing especially when you talk to victims' families. But when you're presenting a case to the public or anybody else, why? You have to give evidence to back your confident statement. You can't just be, well, I feel like it kind of matches. No, you can't do that. All that does is hurt the victim's family more. You have to say, hey, I feel it was this person because of A, B, and C. Now, they may disagree with you. I looked at a case recently from a family member from the Sauter family. They disagreed with me. But at least I gave them reasons, A, B, and C. It's just my opinion. I'm presenting it to you because you asked. So, to me, it's so important to me to do everything with integrity and do it the right way. And try not to hurt people. Okay? Joe Naso, he's not going to get hurt because he has no emotion. Okay? And I wouldn't really, honestly, care too much if I did hurt his feelings, because he hurt a lot of families, including Charlotte Cooks. And if I could help them out just a little bit like I did, I would do it 100 times over. So, Charlotte Cook, number 5 on the list of 10 of Joe Naso's. I believe that it was a team effort to solve that case. I explained that to you. I figured out some parts. I wouldn't have been able to figure out those parts if Bill Noguera didn't get his parts from Joe Naso. And I wouldn't have figured out Miami. No, I didn't figure it out. Patrick figured it out to tie it all together. So that's how it worked. And that's how we solved number 5 on the list of 10. Girl from Miami, near down Peninsula, Charlotte Cook. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one, which is going to be a doozy. The one that I feel the most confident about. So thanks for watching. Mains out.